One soldier says when he returned home from combat, he no longer had the ability to sleep. Another says he could no longer tolerate crowds, that his thoughts are like when you go fishing, you tangle the line. The ward is full of stories like this. I wanted to read this story, which also has a lot of pictures, so we're going to be looking at a lot of pictures, and we're going to be looking at a lot of pictures kind of silently, because I think some pictures speak for themselves and are best when not giving commentary. One second, let's make sure I can go full screen. Okay, I can. So I am going to show you guys these pictures to the best of my ability. Let's go through this. This is a piece specifically covering a psychiatric hospital in Kiev, where the interviewers here, and this is really, really good journalism. I'm really happy that somebody did this. They go to different people at the psychiatric hospitals and talk to the nurses about the type of conditions they're facing, the type of mental health issues they're facing, what it's like to live in one of these psychiatric hospitals, and how the majority of the people at these psychiatric hospitals, even though obviously if they're ruled to be in too poor of a mental condition to serve, many of them, the majority of them will be going back to the front lines to continue to endure some of the worst horrors humanity can cook up in warfare. So let's start the article. And again, this is a really good piece. I'm happy I'm finally getting around to it, because this is a few months old now. The soldier cannot speak about what happened to him. It's been a month since the tragedy, as he calls it. When the subject arises, he freezes and looks at the floor. He gulps for air. He cannot say it. His doctor, a motherly woman, speaks for him. There were 4 of them. They were stationed near the front line in eastern Ukraine, and on that night, they shot at a Russian drone from the sky. A small victory. Then its wreckage hurtled down, hunks of ragged metal slicing into the med below. He was the only one left standing. In the numb hours that followed, someone came to collect the others. 1 dead, 2 wounded. And he was left to hold the position alone through the freezing night and into the next day. Here is a picture of the person in question. By the time they came for him, he could not find words. That's it, the psychiatrist said. He withdrew into himself and doesn't want anything. The soldier has been sent for treatment at a Kiev psychiatric hospital named for Ivan Pavlov, Pavlivka, as it is known. In peacetime, it treated people with severe mental illnesses, mostly schizophrenia, but the war has forced a pivot. Hospitals in Ukraine cannot manage the volume of psychiatric casualties coming in, and commanders need their troops back. Last June, it opened with an overflow unit with 40 beds, but 6 weeks later, it grew to 100. The soldiers' ward is a quiet place, high-ceilinged, with chessboards and a ping-pong table. You could mistake it for a rest home, except that the door handles have been removed. Nurses make the rounds. Now, I have been in a psychiatric ward before as a patient, and the amount of things that they will babify to make sure you can't kill yourself with it is incredible. That'll do from the tray plates that you use. They'll make sure that they're cardboard and not even plastic. They'll give you wooden spoons and forks, but the most thin wood possible, so easy to break. I remember they gave you this menu. And of course, they did the same thing with the doors and the chairs. They made the chairs impossible to pick up. They did this thing with the menus, where they would allow you to pick some of the food you would have the next day. And more than anything, I wanted a hot drink. And I saw that it had hot tea as an option. So I picked it, and I waited 24 hours for it to get back to me. And they gave me a cup, and they gave me a tea bag. So I walk up to a security guard, and I'm like, I was given a cup and a tea bag. How do I make tea? I don't have any hot water. Can I get some? Nope. And then that was that. I remember I tried to get my Switch. Wouldn't let me have my Switch. It really sucked. Nurses make the rounds to distribute pills or to take the patients for injections. The soldiers wear uniforms, but their packs and boots are lined up on the floor beside their beds. In the ward, they wear slippers. A junior lieutenant named Ruslan had the same dream over and over. He dives for a trench, but it is not a trench, it is a grave. He keeps his visit with his wife and children short. I would like to lie in a hole somewhere and hide, he says. One soldier says when he returned home from combat, he no longer had the ability to sleep. Another says he could no longer tolerate crowds, that his thoughts are like when you go fishing, you tangle the line. The ward is full of stories like this. Second, let's go through a few of these pictures. Alexander, age 21, occupation, soldier, former student. I finished school and joined the army in 2021. Then the war started, and everything went wrong. I had post-concussion syndrome. I stayed in the hospital for 21 days. Then I was sent to the military unit. I stayed there for a month, and it got worse. Then they sent me here. A year passed, and I was discharged. I've been diagnosed with schizotypical disorder. I can hear voices. They say to kill, but I'm trying not to listen. This is one of the nurses. Nadia, age 69, occupation, nurse. These patients, they are from the front line. You have to be very careful with them. We worry about them. They are like our children. They are all very nervous, tense all the time. But you know, kindness conquers the world, because when you are kind with them, they treat you the same way. Victor, age 53, occupation, soldier, former teacher. This one really got to me, by the way, this one in particular. The guys say that I talk in my sleep and I fight in the trenches. My fallen brothers, with whom I sit in the trench, ask, Vitya, why don't you shoot? You see them approaching, but I panic. It takes a while to realize that it was just a dream. It's very, very painful. I want to curl up in a corner under a blanket. Some of my brothers in arms were my students. I worked at a school, and they attended my trainings. We were together from the first day of the war. Same trenches, on the same positions, and they died. But I didn't. Each war teaches us something new about trauma. In World War I, hospitals overflowed with soldiers who screamed or froze or wept, described in medical texts as moral invalids. By the end of World War II, a more sympathetic view had emerged, that even the hardest soldier would suffer a psychological collapse after sufficient time in combat. Somewhere, 2 experts from the Surgeon General's office concluded between 200 and 240 days on average. Russia's war in Ukraine stands out amongst modern wars for its extreme violence. Its front lines are close together and barraged with heavy artillery, and rotations from the front lines are infrequent. Ukraine's forces are largely made up of men and women who, until a year ago, had no experience of combat. We are looking at a war that is basically a repetition of the First World War, says Robert Van Voren, who heads the Federation Global Initiative of Psychiatry, which provides mental health support in Ukraine. People just can't fight anymore for psychological reasons. People are at the front line too long, and at a certain point, they crack. That's the reality we have to deal with. Andre, 27, occupation, soldier, former logician for a supermarket company. There are a lot of things in my head, you know, like when you go fishing and you tangle the line. During a defense, a mine hit my trench, and I was shell-shocked. My eyesight worsened, and I'm very nervous about it. When will it get back to normal? I now overthink a lot. I take all my problems to heart. I'm very happy when my family and fiancé come, but it's like I'm not with them. They are here, asking questions, joking, but I stay withdrawn. I used to be a cheerful guy before all this. Now I'm mostly sad. Better off alone. Yulia, 47. Occupation? Combat medic. Independent forensic expert. I'm a combat medic. I can't stand the things I've seen. In Irpin, there was a basement where people gathered. They didn't leave the basement for 3 or 4 days, but the children couldn't stand the pressure. I'm a grandmother, so it's very hard for me to see kids that can't run around, walk, cry, talk. Like everyone else, I ask myself, what are the people guilty of? Why do they have to live like this? When you don't find many answers, the questions accumulate. When you start seeing answers, and the answers don't correspond to reality, you lose your marbles. Stanislav, 29. Occupation? Soldier. Former cook. I didn't plan to end up here. After about 6 months in the position, I started feeling no passion for life. You're in one place all the time. Every day is the same. It's the monotony. Gray days go by, day after day, and nothing changes. Eventually, I lost my appetite. Sleep is also not very good. My psychological state deteriorated. I became fidgety. I can't concentrate on one thing. I'm grabbing at everything. There's no order in my head. Best case scenario, I would like to get out of here as soon as possible to be discharged. I would like to start living a normal life somehow. With each conflict, our view of trauma has become more expansive. In the aftermath of Vietnam, it became clear that wartime experiences could imprint a generation of men, making it difficult for them to work or take part in family life. Now, researchers believe that the effects of trauma may stretch even further, beyond the end of human life, encoding traits that shape children not yet born. This is, I do want to clarify, this is not yet accepted science. These possibilities haunt Dr. Oleg Gaban, a psychiatrist who had advised Ukraine's defense ministry. He has observed Ukraine soldiers since 2014, when Russia seized Crimea. Gaban finds them intensely focused in combat, sharpened by adrenaline. It's when they leave the war zone that symptoms begin to surface, nightmares and flashbacks and insomnia. Gaban, a professor of psychology at the Bakhmut's National Medical University in Kiev, worries about what this will mean in the years to come. I never can pronounce this word. Children doctors studying children born after the famine have found, decades later, traces of their parents' experienced. Higher rates of obesity, schizophrenia, diabetes, their lives are shorter. It worries me, he says. I want my grandchildren and great-grandchildren to live in a country called Ukraine. Here is another set of photos. Let me go full screen. I haven't went full screen for the last ones. Ruslan, 45. Occupation? Soldier. Former construction worker. We are the shock troopers, the diehards. We didn't sleep. Could stay awake for 5 days, not eat for 5 days. We were taking the right bank of Kherson, and there I was, wounded and shell-shocked. A lot of my guys were killed. They were burning in armored personnel carriers. I saw it with my own eyes. I got hit with a grenade, but it didn't explode. I got hit in my bulletproof vest. Then I flew 20 meters away. I wound up with shell shock. My wife died 4 years ago. I have no children. I do have an aunt and cousins. They call me. They worry because I'm alone. Mikola, 59. Occupation, nurse. I just transferred here 2 years ago. This work is very particular, in the sense that the guys come mostly from the front lines. They need an individualized approach. Each guy's condition is different. I start in the morning, have a conversation with them, and I access his condition. I adjust to each person in this way. Sergil, 42. Occupation, soldier. Former employee at a shipping company. On April 28th, 2022, I joined the Air Assault Forces. The most memorable day was the 26th of May. We were shelled twice, and twice I miraculously remained alive. A lot of guys died, not least because of the mediocre leadership of our unit. I do want to just quickly say, this is me, this is not part of the quote, that there's a lot of stories, particularly early on in the war, first few months, of bad leadership leading to a lot of unnecessary deaths. This became particularly notorious in the international press when it comes to the Legion. I know the Kiev Independent wrote a really good story about this too. And from my conversations with Legion guys, that seems to correspond with reality. A lot of guys died, not least because of the mediocre leadership of our unit. In 8 days, almost the entire battalion was destroyed. In the first months, I even fought without a first aid kit. I was shocked that they sell drugs. Everyone knows who does this, whether it's controlled by the police and the military. I arrived inspired. I came to fight for my country. Going to continue to fight, but I was disappointed. I don't want to talk too much about drug use, because there are people here who smoke pot. And I don't really care about that. I don't think that's a crisis. I think it's people trying to cope for good reason. They need to cope. But there is also harder drugs. They do exist. People still sell them. I haven't seen anybody like doing heroin or things like that, but I have seen aid workers like snorting like crushed up like pills in order to give themselves a boost and to keep going, keep up with deliveries because they push themselves too hard. I have seen that. For the doctors of Pavlinka, it is all they can do to keep it up. Dr. Antonia Andrinko, who oversees one of the soldiers' wards, realized early on that her workload would not allow her to go home. On weeknights, she sleeps on a cot in her office. In her ward, the soldiers rest and take smoke breaks. There is no gym, just 2 exercise bikes in a room of her office, and no psychotherapist. Standard treatment at the hospital says, I remember when this really killed me at the time too. They really wanted us to do exercise. And so they would kind of like, oh, you're not forced to do it, but they would do everything you could to force you to exercise. But the exercise was going on to the roof of the building, which was like in a weird little divot from the rest of the roof. So there was like a hole, and then you were in the hole, and there was a door that you can get into the hole, but you can't like look at the tree line. You can only look up and just see like a blue piece of the sky. That's it. It felt like prison, at least in that capacity. It felt very like, we can't allow you to see the outside world, but also you do need some exercise. So just kind of like walk around out here for a bit. I really hated it. In her ward, the soldiers rest and take smoke breaks. There is no gym, just 2 exercise bikes in a room of her office, and no psychotherapist. Standard treatment at the hospital says its director, Dr. Mishiev, is as it was, mostly medication. After 3 or 4 weeks, soldiers return to their units to be assessed by a medical commission. Mishiev estimates that some 70% of them return to duty. This is the reality in which we work, he said. Either we return them to the armed forces, or we recommend to declare them unfit for military service due to pronounced changes in personality and psychological trauma. In her office, Dr. Andrinko listens to them, sometimes for hours. She starts by asking about simple things, the pain in a soldier's back or stomach, circling around the subject of the terrible things they have seen. This is what they need, she says. Someone to listen to their stories. Their wife and children cannot do it. Once they start talking, it can be hard to get them to stop. There was a soldier whose parents lived in the gray zone, and they were sitting in the kitchen when someone threw a grenade in their window. He went home to collect the remains and took 2 bags, one for his father, one for his mother. What tablet will help? The psychiatrist asked. She groped for something to say for the soldier, and finally told him, to compensate for this somehow, you have to find a girl and marry, and give birth to 5 children, and give them all the love which you could not receive from your parents. Her voice wavered. She swallowed. In the current situation, no pill will help, she added. The soldiers described symptoms coming on mysteriously as a failing of the body. Alexander, a fisherman before the war, began to feel it during a rotation from the combat zone. He stuttered, his hand shook, his blood pressure rose. He was no longer in danger, but his body was permanently on alert. Ruslan, the junior lieutenant, was an art teacher before the Russian invasion. Now he cannot shake the feeling that something terrible is about to happen. In Bakhmut, he commanded a sapper unit. Sappers they're the people who disable mines and place mines, and was assigned to plant mines in front of Ukrainian lines, steering a vehicle loaded with ammunition and men back and forth under fire. He made it through, incredibly, but this is the paradox. Now the experience is with him all the time. All the horrors in Bakhmut are now starting to haunt me, he says. It was hell. I live in hell. I do, if people want to know a little bit more about sappers, I do have an interview on my main channel, Dylan Burns TV, with two sappers who were involved in the defense of Kiev. It doesn't get that much into the psychological aspects, but it's a really good interview. And not a lot of people have watched it because I didn't do English voiceover. The subtitles are still there, but I didn't do the voiceover. So I was thinking about maybe having it redone in the way future with voiceover, so maybe more people can give it attention. Then I like repost it on another platform like Twitter or something. Who knows? Many describe a feeling of remoteness, even among family. Valery, who was a construction worker before the war, says, "Sometimes my wife talks to me, and then she will notice. She says, 'Did you hear what I said?' It's true. Sometimes he can't hear her. His thoughts rotate on an axis, something that happened at the front. A whole crew, his friends, who burned to death inside a tank. He remembers their names, their hometowns, their positions, the names of their wives. Valery recalls promising one of them, in a conversation just before sleep, to help fix his roof. Our beds were next to each other. Then he was gone. The bodies have not been retrieved from the site of the fire. The fact still eats at him. Another thing eats at him too. One wife asked how her husband died. He could not tell her. Sometimes I wake up at night and can't breathe. It takes time to calm down. I have a pill ready on my bedside table to take right away." He has been in the ward since the summer, but other men arrive and depart. The soldier, stunned into silence by the drone attack, was off again. By the way, the reason I'm mostly just reading this and I'm not giving a ton of added commentary is that it's honestly difficult for me to read. Not only because of my personal experience with like the ward, obviously very different, but just this is unbelievably tragic. He has been in the ward since the summer, but other men arrive and depart. The soldier, stunned into silence by the drone attack, was off again last week, scheduled to appear before a medical commission that would determine whether he was fit to return to war. He was grasping at straws to avoid going back, Dr. Zrenko said. This is a familiar refrain, she says. Mama Tonia, write something so I can stay another 2 days. She tries to approach these questions practically. The country is fighting a full-scale war. Before the soldier leaves, she takes their photographs. She hangs them on the wall so she won't forget them. The living ones in a gallery in her office, and the dead ones in a hallway outside. That's the article. That end really gets me too. That there's two different sections for the people who, are still alive and the ones who are dead. That gets me. This entire article gets me. I even remember hearing that the authors around this piece, there were questions about their accreditation because it was almost viewed as like too doomeristic around the war, and some people like questioned the motives behind an article like this. Let me be clear. I think articles like this are extremely important. I think it's important not only to capture the truth of the war and how war breaks men, will literally break men psychologically, so that the person you sent off to war is not the same person that comes back. Not that they're, not deserving of the same rights, but that parts of them have changed. Talking about their reality is important. Not only So we keep the facts of history the facts, but also to make sure that people know the cost of war. And there's also, I think, an element to this that's important to make sure that these people are getting proper care, that they have proper gym facilities, and that they have a proper place to heal. And that if they are not fit for service, they do not go back to service. This was a hard article to read. I'm going to be honest. I wish I had more wacky commentary to give you guys. The only commentary I have is that Ukraine desperately needs more psychological medical help. Their soldiers desperately still need support, not only in these medical centers, but also as close to the field as they can get. And that an open conversation about the mental health impacts of the war in Ukraine is necessary. Not tomorrow, not when the war's over, but now, right now. Have you seen this New York Times piece? Beginning is probably TOS, but it's devastating and raw. Let me see. Oh, I have seen this. The I Cry Silently thing. Yeah, I've seen this. It's really hard to watch though. 1 second. Let me see. You said the beginning's TOS. Let me see. Like some, I don't know. Those are like bloody rags. Those are like torn cloth. This is probably okay. We can watch this quick. This is graphic images, but all I saw was a bloody rag. It got me? Yeah, it's pretty bad. Oh.
Скажіть, що сталося?
Can you tell us what happened here?
Скажіть, що сталося?
There was shelling.
По дворах кров.
There's blood on the door.
Кругом кров.
There's blood everywhere.
Все в крові.
Everything's covered with blood.
Кров має запах.
Blood has a smell,
Особливо свіжа кров.
especially fresh blood. Valitian joined the army 7 months ago. He drives back and forth to the front line every day.
Жам до ворога.
1 second. No, I don't want to turn off the audio. I want to read the sentence. Evacuating dead and wounded soldiers. There we go.
Ну, під'їжджаємо до ворога.
We get as close as 500 to 600 meters from the enemy.
Поранений.
That's what we do. Pick up the wounded.
І бистренько відкатуємося.
Then we quickly drive back
І відразу приходить.
because they shell us right away.
По вас безпосередньо
Have you personally been shelled?
Стріляли.
Yes, I have.
Стріляли.
They shot at us today.
Кажуть, є 300.
When they tell us there is a 300, it means someone is wounded.
Є 200. Це
200 means
не живі.
they're dead.
з які загинули сьогодні, ви знаєте?
Did you know the soldier who died today? No, I didn't know them.
Ви бачили своїх?
Have you seen your fellow soldiers being wounded?
Ну, своїх бачу.
I have.
Що відчуваєте?
How do you feel when you give aid to your fellow soldiers?
Своїм побратимам?
Ну, важко. Ну, це
It's
не-
difficult. I can't explain.
Зараз буду вбирати кров.
I'll clean the blood now.
Молоді хлопці лягають.
Young boys die.
Вони в житті не бачили.
They haven't seen life yet.
Ну, складно ж дивитися.
It's difficult for me to see that.
Буває, плачеш.
Sometimes I cry quietly.
Не розуміють люди.
I don't know what this war is for. Grad shells are falling.
Падають. жорстко обстрілюють.
They are shelling us hard.
Тут важка лінія фронту.
This
важка.
part of the front line is difficult.
Ну, коли сильні обстріли, страшно.
When there's heavy shelling, it's scary.
Страшно, коли танк робить. Потім.
It's scary when a tank is shooting at you.
Міномет робить.
When it's a
міномет
mortar firing, you can hear where it goes, where the shell is gonna land.
з танка не чутно. Виход
When it's a
чуєш,
tank, you hear it fire, and the shell lands immediately.
Зразу.
You can't tell where it's going to land. It's a split second. There's a bang, and it lands before you can even hear it. That's true.
Що найстрашніше, що ви бачили за цю війну?
What's the scariest thing you've seen?
Ну, я не скажу це.
I won't tell you that.
А що воно?
Чому ви не скажете?
No one will understand.
Хто був тут, той пойме.
Only those who have been here will understand. That's that piece. This is a really good piece by the New York Times. The New York Times has been on a roll in Ukraine when it comes to this type of on the ground, very personal, very honest depiction of the war and how people feel about it.